"I'll open my legs, Mr. Callahan," the giant widow whispered through fever-cracked lips, her fuller body still formidable despite months of wasting sickness. "Just fulfill my last wish before this Christmas dawn takes me." Jedediah Callahan's mouth fell open in shock, his calloused rancher hands resting on her substantial thighs, unable to comprehend why this strong, proud woman, a widow who'd once commanded respect throughout the Montana Territory, was surrendering herself so desperately in the soft glow of Christmas lights. The sick widow's dark eyes held no seduction, only raw, aching need and the terrible resignation of someone who believed she'd never see another holiday. Her full frame draped in a simple cream dress that spoke of a woman who'd given up on vanity, but not yet on living. The lonely rancher had come to her isolated cabin on Christmas Eve with firewood and supplies, expecting to find a corpse, but instead found this: a giant of a woman, weak but still powerful, offering her most intimate self for a wish she hadn't yet spoken aloud. Jed jerked his hands back like her skin had burned him, his heart slamming against his ribs so hard he thought it might crack through bone. The warmth of her flesh still tingled on his palms, and he could smell the fever on her, that sickly sweet scent of a body fighting death, mixed with the pine from the Christmas tree and the faint lavender soap she must have used before he arrived. "Ma'am, His voice cracked like a boy's, and shame flooded his face, hot enough to match the fireplace crackling behind them. He scrambled backward on his knees, his boots scraping against the worn wooden floor, but she reached out and grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. "Please." The word broke into pieces in her mouth, and tears spilled down her full cheeks, catching the red and green light from the tree ornaments. "I'm not asking you to bed me out of lust, Mr. Callahan. I'm asking you to help me remember what it feels like to be alive before I die." Her grip tightened, her fever-hot fingers pressing into his pulse point. "My last wish is to feel wanted. Just once. Harold never—" She choked on her late husband's name, and fresh tears came. "He never touched me like I mattered, like I was beautiful. He took what he needed in the dark and left me empty for 15 years. Jed's throat closed up completely. He'd heard the stories about Harold Kane, a hard man, a cold man, who'd worked his ranch with an iron fist and treated his wife like another piece of livestock. When Harold died last spring from a horse kick to the skull, half the town secretly celebrated. But Martha had mourned properly, worn her black dress, kept to herself. Then the consumption came in August, turning her strong body weak, stealing her breath, making every day a battle she was clearly losing. "You're not dying tonight," Jed said, but his voice held no conviction. He could see death in her eyes, that glazed-over look his mother had worn in her final days. He could hear it in her rattling breath, see it in the way her hands shook even when she tried to hold them steady. The town doctor had given her until January at most. Christmas Eve seemed about right for the end. "I am," Martha whispered. "I can feel it, Mr. Callahan. The cold's been creeping up from my toes for 3 days now. It's in my knees already. By morning, it'll reach my heart." She pulled his hand back to her leg, pressing his palm against her calf. "Feel that? Ice cold. But here." She slid his hand higher, to her thigh, to the warm skin just above her knee. "Here I can still feel. Here I'm still alive. I don't want to die without knowing what it's like to have a man touch me with kindness, with want, with—" She couldn't finish. Jed's hand trembled against her warm flesh, and something ancient and buried cracked open in his chest. He'd been alone for 5 years, ever since Rebecca left him standing at the altar in front of the whole town, running off with a gold prospector who promised her riches and adventure. The loneliness had turned him hard, turned him into a ghost who worked his ranch and spoke to no one, who came to town only for supplies and left before anyone could ask him to stay for supper. He'd forgotten what it felt like to be needed, to be wanted, to touch another human being with anything more than a handshake. "What you're asking," he swallowed hard. "Martha, if anyone found out, your reputation—" "I'm dying," she cut him off, her voice suddenly sharp with anger. "What do I care about reputation? I'll be in the ground before New Year's. But you, Mr. Callahan, you're still alive. You're still young enough to start over, so why do you live like you're already dead?" Her dark eyes burned into his, and he saw the giant woman she used to be. The one who'd outworked every ranch hand Harold ever hired, who'd delivered her own breech baby when the midwife couldn't make it through a blizzard, who'd shot a mountain lion off her porch at 40 yards. The question hit him like a fist to the gut. Why did he live like he was already dead? Because it was easier than hoping, easier than risking his heart again, easier than admitting he was so damn lonely he sometimes talked to his horses just to hear a voice answer back, even if it was just a whinny. I don't know, he admitted, and the honesty of it surprised him. Martha's face softened. She reached up with her other hand and touched his bearded jaw, her fever-warm fingers gentle against his weathered skin. Then maybe we can help each other remember what living feels like, just for tonight, just for Christmas. Her thumb brushed across his lower lip, and he shuddered. My last wish isn't just to be touched, Mr. Callahan. It's to be loved, even if it's pretend. Even if it's just for one night. I want to know what it feels like before the cold takes me. The Christmas tree lights blurred in Jed's vision, and he realized he was crying. When was the last time he'd cried? When Rebecca left? When his mother died? He couldn't remember. But here he was, kneeling in front of a dying woman on Christmas Eve, tears running into his beard, his hand still resting on her warm thigh, his heart breaking for both of them. It won't be pretend, he heard himself say, and he meant it. God help him, he meant it. Martha's whole body sagged with relief, and she let out a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. Her hands were still shaking as she cupped his face, her thumbs wiping away his tears with a tenderness that made his chest ache. Thank you, she breathed. Thank you, Jedediah. The sound of his full name on her lips, spoken with such raw gratitude, nearly undid him completely. Nobody had called him Jedediah since his mother died. He was just Jed, or Callahan, or that hermit rancher to most folks in town. He stood slowly, his knees protesting after kneeling on the hard floor, and held out both hands to her. Not like this, he said softly. Not with you sitting in a chair like you're at the doctor's office. If I'm going to love you proper, Martha Kane, I'm going to do it right. She stared at his outstretched hands like they were a miracle, and when she placed her trembling fingers in his palms, he pulled her up gently, steadying her when her weak legs wobbled beneath her weight. She was taller than he expected, nearly his height, and even weakened by months of sickness, she was substantial, solid, real. He could feel the strength that still lived in her bones, the formidable woman she'd been before consumption tried to steal her away. I haven't been held standing up since Harold died, she whispered, and the admission broke something else inside Jed's carefully guarded heart. What kind of man went 15 years without holding his wife, without making her feel cherished? Then we'll start there, Jed said. He released one of her hands and slid his arm around her waist, pulling her close against his chest. She gasped, a sharp intake of breath that rattled in her lungs, and then melted into him, her head dropping onto his shoulder, her body fitting against his like she was made to be there. He could feel her fever through the thin cream fabric of her dress, could feel every curve of her pressed against him, could smell the lavender soap in her long dark hair, mixed with sickness and pine and something uniquely her. You're so warm, she murmured against his neck, and he felt her lips move against his skin. Like a furnace. I've been so cold, Jedediah. So cold for so long. Her arms wrapped around his back, clinging to him with desperate strength, and he held her tighter, trying to pour all his warmth into her trembling body. They stood there, swaying slightly in front of the Christmas tree, the colored lights painting them in reds and greens and golds, the fire crackling softly, snow beginning to fall outside the cabin windows. Jed started humming without thinking, an old hymn his mother used to sing, O come, Emmanuel. And Martha made a sound like she was breaking apart. Dance with me, she whispered. I never got to dance. Harold said it was foolish, said big women like me looked ridiculous dancing. Rage flashed through Jed so hot and sudden it surprised him. Harold Kane was lucky he was already dead, because Jed wanted to kill him all over again, for every cruel word, every cold night, every moment he'd made this beautiful, strong woman feel like she was anything less than extraordinary. You're not big, Jed said fiercely, pulling back just enough to look into her eyes. You're magnificent. You're a giant because you're powerful, Martha, because you're strong, because you take up space in this world like you have every right to. And any man who couldn't see that was a fool and a coward. Her dark eyes went wide, and fresh tears spilled over. You don't have to say things like that just because— I'm not saying it because of anything, he interrupted. I'm saying it because it's true. I remember you, Martha, before Harold, before the sickness. You worked the Triple K ranch like you owned it. You could rope a steer faster than any man in the territory. You helped birth half the calves in this valley and never once complained about the blood or the mess. You're not some delicate flower. You're a damn wildfire, and I'm honored to dance with you. He started moving then, slow and careful, guiding her in a simple waltz around the small space in front of the tree. She followed his lead clumsily at first, her sick body uncoordinated, but then she found the rhythm, found her strength, and they moved together like water. Jed kept humming, switching to Silent Night, and then The First Noel. And Martha hummed with him, her voice weak but sweet, her breath warm against his throat. "Why did you really come here tonight?" she asked suddenly, her fingers tightening in the fabric of his shirt. "The whole town's given up on me. Doc Patterson told me to get my affairs in order 3 weeks ago. Even my sister stopped visiting because she can't stand to watch me die. But you came, on Christmas Eve, through the snow. Why?" Jed's feet stopped moving, but he didn't let her go. He couldn't tell her the whole truth, that he'd been thinking about her for months, that every time he came to town and heard updates about poor Martha Kane wasting away, something twisted in his gut, that he'd ridden past her cabin a dozen times, always finding an excuse to check on her from a distance, making sure smoke was still coming from her chimney, that when he'd seen the smoke this morning, thin and weak, he'd known tonight might be the last night, and the thought of her dying alone on Christmas had been unbearable. "Because nobody should be alone on Christmas," he said instead, which was true, even if it wasn't the whole truth. "And because I know what it's like to be given up on, to be written off as already gone." He pulled back enough to meet her eyes. "When Rebecca left me at the altar, this whole town decided I was broken, unfixable. They stopped inviting me to socials, stopped trying to set me up with their daughters or sisters or widowed cousins. I became invisible, a ghost, and I let myself believe them. I let myself disappear." Martha's hand came up to his face again, her thumb tracing the line of his jaw. "You're not invisible to me," she said. "You're the most real thing I've felt in years." She rose up on her toes, wavering, unsteady, and pressed her lips to his before he could think, before he could breathe, before he could do anything but kiss her back. The kiss was soft and tentative at first, her lips dry and cracked from fever, but then it deepened, became urgent, became desperate. She tasted like peppermint tea and sickness and something sweet he couldn't name, and Jed kissed her like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. Her fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him closer, and he wrapped both arms around her waist, lifting her slightly off her feet, supporting her weight completely. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Martha was smiling, actually smiling, and it transformed her entire face. "That," she gasped, "was worth dying for." But even as she said it, even as she laughed breathlessly, Jed felt her body sag against him, felt her legs give out completely. He caught her easily, lifting her into his arms like she weighed nothing, and her head lolled against his shoulder. "I'm sorry," she murmured. "I'm so tired, Jedediah, so tired of fighting." "Then stop fighting," he said, carrying her toward the bedroom he could see through the open door. "Let me take care of you tonight. Let me love you like you deserve. And tomorrow—" He laid her gently on the bed, the quilt soft beneath her, and knelt beside her again, taking her hand. "Tomorrow we'll figure out how to make you want to keep living." Martha's eyes were already drifting closed, her breathing shallow and labored, but she squeezed his hand with what little strength she had left. "My real last wish," she whispered, so quiet he had to lean in to hear, "is to wake up tomorrow and not be afraid of living. Can you give me that, lonely rancher? Can you love me so perfectly that I choose life instead of surrender?" Jed pressed his lips to her knuckles, his tears falling onto her skin. "I can try," he promised. "God help me, Martha, I can try." He didn't leave her side that night. Jed pulled off his boots and coat, banked the fire in the bedroom stove until it glowed warm and steady, and climbed fully clothed onto the bed beside her. Martha stirred when the mattress dipped under his weight, her eyes fluttering open in the dim orange light. "You stayed," she breathed, and the wonder in her voice gutted him. "I'm not going anywhere," he promised, and he pulled her carefully into his arms, her back against his chest, his body curled protectively around hers. She was burning with fever now, her skin so hot it scared him, and he could feel the shivers racking through her despite the warmth. He rubbed his hands up and down her arms, trying to generate more heat, trying to fight the cold she said was creeping up from her toes toward her heart. "Tell me about your ranch," she whispered into the darkness. "I want to hear what your life is like, what you do when you're alone, who you are when nobody's watching." So he told her. He described his 160 acres tucked into the valley between two mountain ridges, the creek that ran year-round providing water for his cattle, the cabin he'd built with his own hands from lodgepole pine. He told her about his 12 horses, naming each one and describing their personalities like they were people. He told her about the sunrise from his porch, how the light turned the snow-covered peaks pink and gold, how sometimes he'd sit there with his coffee and feel like the only man left in the world. "That sounds lonely," Martha murmured, and he felt her hand find his where it rested on her stomach, lacing their fingers together. It was, he admitted. It is, but I convinced myself I liked it that way, told myself it was safer than risking my heart again. He pressed his face into her hair, breathing in the lavender scent. I was lying to myself, Martha. I was just scared. Too scared to live. She shifted in his arms, rolling over with effort to face him, and even in the dim firelight he could see the determination burning in her fever-bright eyes. Then we're both cowards, she said. I let Harold's cruelty convince me I wasn't worthy of love. Let his cold touch make me believe my body was something shameful. Let 15 years of darkness teach me that this, she gestured weakly at herself, was all I deserved, and when the consumption came, I welcomed it. Do you understand? I was relieved. Finally, an end to feeling invisible, unwanted, wrong. You're not wrong, Jed said fiercely. Martha, look at me. He cupped her face in both hands, making sure she couldn't look away. You are not wrong. You never were. Harold was sick inside, twisted up with meanness and small-mindedness. But you're everything good, everything strong, everything beautiful about this hard, brutal world. Then why does it hurt so much to keep breathing? The question came out broken, desperate, and Jed knew she wasn't just talking about her sick lungs. Because you've been doing it alone, he said. Because you've been carrying all that pain and shame and loneliness by yourself for so long, you forgot what it feels like to share the weight. He pressed his forehead against hers, their noses touching, their breath mingling in the small space between them. Let me carry some of it, Martha. Let me help you remember that living doesn't have to hurt this much. She kissed him then, deeper than before, more urgent, her hands pulling at his shirt, fumbling with the buttons. Show me, she gasped between kisses. Show me what it's supposed to feel like. Please, Jedediah, love me so I know it's real before I go. You're not going, he said, but he helped her with his shirt anyway, shrugging it off and tossing it aside. Her hands went immediately to his chest, her fever-hot palms pressing against his skin, mapping the planes of muscle and the scars from years of ranch work. He could feel her trembling, not just from fever now, but from anticipation, from fear, from desire she'd probably never allowed herself to feel. He took his time with her dress, his calloused fingers gentle on each button, peeling the fabric away slowly, reverently, like he was unwrapping something precious. And she was precious. Every inch of her full, strong body was a revelation. The soft curves Harold had scorned, the strength that still lived in her muscles despite months of wasting, the stretch marks and scars that told the story of a life lived hard and honest. You're beautiful, he whispered, and he meant it with every fiber of his being. God, Martha, you're the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. She started crying again, but she was smiling too, her hands reaching for him, pulling him down against her. I believe you, she sobbed. I actually believe you. How is that possible? Because it's true, he said simply, and then he set about proving it to her with his hands, his mouth, his whole body. He loved her slowly, carefully, paying attention to every gasp and sigh, every place she tensed, and every place she softened. He whispered praise against her skin, told her she was magnificent, told her she was strong, told her she was wanted and needed and cherished. And when she finally shattered in his arms, crying out his name like a prayer, he held her through it, anchored her, kept her safe. Afterward, they lay tangled together, her head on his chest, his arms wrapped tight around her, and Jed realized she was crying again, deep, racking sobs that shook her entire body. I don't want to die, she gasped against his skin. Jedediah, I don't want to die anymore. I want to live. I want more of this, more of you, more mornings and nights and seasons. I want to see spring again. I want to... She couldn't finish, the sobs taking over completely. Then live, he said, his own voice thick with tears. Fight, Martha. Fight like I know you can. Fight like you fought that mountain lion. Fight like you fought through that breech birth. Fight like you fought every damn day of your hard life. Because I need you. I need you to live. But the doctor said, I don't care what the doctor said, Jed interrupted fiercely. Doctors don't know everything. I've seen people recover from consumption. I've seen miracles happen. And if sheer stubborn will counts for anything, you've got enough to survive 10 plagues. He tilted her face up to his, kissing her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. Stay with me, Martha, please. Don't leave me alone again. I can't... His voice cracked. I can't go back to being a ghost. Not now. Not after this. She stared at him for a long moment, her dark eyes searching his face, and then something shifted behind her gaze, something fierce and determined and utterly alive. Okay, she whispered. Okay, I'll try, I'll fight, but you have to promise me something. Anything. You have to fight too, she said. No more hiding on your ranch. No more living like you're already dead. No more letting fear make you invisible. Promise me that if I survive this, you'll actually live. With me. Out loud. Where the whole town can see. The request terrified him more than anything had in 5 years, but looking down at this brave, beautiful woman who'd just chosen life over surrender, how could he say no? I promise, he said, and he sealed it with a kiss. They fell asleep like that, wrapped around each other, and Jed didn't let go once through the long Christmas night. Every time Martha's breathing turned shallow or labored, he held her tighter, whispered encouragements, reminded her she'd promised to fight. And every time she steadied, her breathing deepened and she held on. When dawn broke on Christmas morning, painting the cabin in soft pink and gold light, Jed woke to find Martha watching him. Her fever had broken sometime in the night. Her skin was cool and dry, her eyes clear and bright. I'm still here, she said, and she sounded surprised and delighted and scared all at once. Jedediah, I'm still here. The cold, it's gone. I can feel my toes again. I can breathe without it rattling. I'm still here. You're still here, he repeated, his throat tight with emotion. You stubborn, magnificent woman. You actually did it. You chose to live. We chose, she corrected, her hand cupping his bearded jaw. You loved me so perfectly I couldn't bear to leave. You made me remember what living feels like. You gave me something to fight for. She kissed him softly, sweetly, and it tasted like hope and new beginnings and Christmas morning miracles. They got out of bed slowly, helping each other dress, stealing kisses between buttons and laces. Martha was weak and unsteady on her feet, but she was alive, gloriously, defiantly alive. Jed made her breakfast from the supplies he'd brought, strong coffee and bacon and eggs, and she ate with more appetite than she'd had in months. The color was already returning to her cheeks, the life flowing back into her limbs. What happens now? She asked as they sat together at her small table, their hands clasped between them. The town thinks I'm dying. Hell, I thought I was dying. What do we tell people? The truth, Jed said firmly, that you got better, that Christmas brought a miracle, and that I'm courting you properly and publicly, and I don't give a damn who has a problem with it. He squeezed her fingers. We promised each other, Martha, no more hiding, no more living like we're already dead. We do this right, out loud, together. The lonely rancher and the giant widow, she said with a laugh that was half sob. We're going to scandalize this whole town. Good, Jed said, grinning. Let them talk. Let them see that second chances are real, that love can heal, that two broken people can choose each other and choose life and build something beautiful out of the wreckage. He stood and pulled her to her feet, into his arms, exactly where she belonged. I love you, Martha Kane. I think I started loving you the moment I saw you lift that 100-pound feed sack when Harold was too lazy to help. I just didn't know it until last night. I love you too, Jedediah Callahan, she whispered against his chest. Thank you for giving me my life back, for giving me a reason to fight, for loving me so perfectly I chose to live. They stood there in the Christmas morning light, holding each other, two formerly broken people made whole by courage and tenderness and the simple choice to keep breathing. And outside, the Montana snow fell soft and pure, covering everything in white, making the world new again. Before we go, we want to hear from you. Where are you watching from right now, and what time is it in your part of the world? Drop your location and time in the comments below. We love connecting with our viewers from all corners of the globe. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss our next powerful tale of love, redemption, and second chances. Your support means everything to us, and we can't wait to bring you more stories that remind us all what it means to truly live. God bless you, and Merry Christmas.